hopefully people outside the Ukrainian community fall in love with Ukraine and want to continue to support Ukraine. And what we are trying to do is to touch people at a human level. I think all of us contributing a little make a big difference. That's what we're trying to do.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is a Ukrainian guide to Lena. And in this video, I'd like to share one more amazing story about American people helping Ukraine. So this is the box that I received from one of my subscribers. It was a Christmas present, and I was very surprised to see this. You see the colors, yes, on my t-shirt and on this candle. This is the candle called Ukraine. It looks nice, it smells amazing. But what's the most amazing thing is this little note. And it says that 100% of profits from this Ukraine candle will be donated to Ukrainian nonprofit Razom for Ukraine, which means Together for Ukraine. And this is a nonprofit that helps a lot Ukrainian people to survive this war and Ukrainian army to defeat the terrorists and to defend Ukrainian people. When I started to investigate more about this candle, I reached Christina from Spotlights Ukraine and found out about her incredible work to keep Ukraine on Spotlight. Hello, Christina, very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, thank you.
Why do you think it is so important to keep Ukraine on Spotlight?
I fear that over time, with the Russian war on Ukraine, people will grow tired of the story, and that we need to continue to support Ukraine. We're on a mission to support Ukraine, and what we look for are stories about what's happening in Ukraine, nonprofits and companies that are doing fundraising and events to support Ukraine. We saw a story about Door County Candle, and then reached out to the owner there to find out about the initiative, and did an interview with Christiana and wrote a story about what they're doing there to support Ukraine. She grew up around Ukrainian culture, speaks fluent, Ukrainian, and it's not only Christiana's initiative, but also the way the entire community there stepped in to help to produce these candles. She got some visibility very early on with local PBS station, and very quickly started to receive orders that they were overwhelmed with. Her entire community there, and even people from outside her local community, came to help in whatever way they could. So to label the candles, to just help produce them, to keep up with the orders, in a very short time, they raised over $800,000 for Razom for Ukraine. Yeah, so what we're trying to do, my ethnic background is Ukrainian. My maiden name is Shevchenko. And my parents both fled Ukraine as young children, came over during World War II to the United States. So they met here in the United States, settled in New York on Long Island, and I grew up very close to the Ukrainian community in New York. So when Russia attacked Ukraine on February 24th, just like so many people around the world, I looked and was horrified and wanted to think about how I might be able to help somehow beyond maybe donated money to a nonprofit. So my background is marketing communications. I have an agency and we work in business to business marketing communications. But I thought maybe I could leverage those skill sets to somehow support Ukraine. I deal with work with a very creative global team and people who use personal storytelling in business to help motivate and move people. And that was the inspiration for Spotlight Ukraine. And basically what we are trying to do with our website, our blog, our social media is to keep Ukraine in the conversation, share personal stories about what's happening there, also about the work that volunteers are doing, nonprofits are doing, just to try to keep Ukraine in the public eye and people engaged and motivated to help in some manner. We're also trying to share stories about Ukrainian culture that is under attack again. Hopefully people outside the Ukrainian community fall in love with Ukraine and want to continue to support Ukraine in whatever way they can, whether that's donating money or volunteering or just advocating for our government to support Ukraine. So that's our motivation. Also, to amplify the messages and work that nonprofits are doing to support Ukraine. And what we're also doing is setting up our own initiatives. We did a fundraising effort to support World Central Kitchen's work in Ukraine. And right now we're actually working on setting up some giving campaigns where we have Ukrainian-inspired T-shirts, and the profits will go to nonprofit organizations such as Razom for Ukraine, the Ukrainian Women's League, and so on. So we are just a small little cog, in the big picture. But my personal fear is that over time, and we see it already, the news media, the mainstream news media covers Ukraine less and less. They cover the bigger stories, the big attacks, the big bombings and missile strikes. And what we are trying to do is to touch people at a human level, to share personal stories that connect with people, and hopefully can do a little part in helping to support Ukrainian people, Ukraine's sovereignty, and also to help support the cultural preservation of Ukrainian culture. And that's what we're about. So we're always scanning for articles or stories around what people are doing, the difference makers, we call them, people like Christiana and others who are really doing whatever they can to contribute and to support Ukraine. People like yourself, for example. I really enjoyed your YouTube channel, and it's interesting because when I got the email from you, I recognized you immediately. I saw the segment, one of them on CNN with Anderson Cooper. So, your work is really important as well. So I think all of us contributing a little make a big difference. That's what we're trying to do.
Thank you for your kind words. Where can we see these stories from Ukraine that you?
Yeah, so our website is spotlightukraine.com. And we are mostly volunteers writing stories. We are looking for contributions from people within the Ukrainian community and people outside of the Ukrainian community that want to share stories or reflections about what's happening in Ukraine or about the work that they're doing to fundraise. We're just getting started in a way, and trying to build our audience and to keep Ukraine in the spotlight. That's our motivation. And hopefully we can help in some way, to continue public support for Ukraine.
Why do you think it's so important to keep Ukraine in spotlight? Why is it important not only for Ukraine, but for other people?
The war is not only about Ukraine, it's about freedom for all of us, really. To me, it's so obvious, in terms of why it's important for the world to support Ukraine, to curb aggression, to have Ukraine and freedom prevail. They have to, it's freedom for the world, for all of our freedoms. It's important. And I mean, obviously for Ukraine and the people of Ukraine, just the atrocities that are happening, it's just I see the stories around whether or not there are war crimes, and it's almost ridiculous to even debate that. We did an interview with a photographer who went to Ukraine to document what was happening, and we have a couple of stories where he shared with us some of his photographs that were really incredible, right in Sarivka, right after the missile strikes there, and just innocent people, being killed, and the civilian targets that have been struck. It's just so incredibly important that this gets curtailed, and not curtailed, ends. So it's interesting to me because throughout my life, I've always felt that I've been socially conscious, and You lend support here and there with different fundraisers, but because there's a personal connection here, really, opened my eyes more to how we need to be much more of global citizens in general, and I just, it's just really important for all of us that Ukraine prevails and is strong, and that they retain their sovereignty as a state.
What other stories impressed you?
I'm so inspired by all the people globally that are helping, people that may or may not have direct connections to Ukraine. So I think those are incredible stories to share. But also, what's really inspiring, and I interviewed a woman just last week, Alia Cheban. She's from Serhivka originally. She was living in Kharkiv and then went back to Serhivka after the missile strike there. And I learned about her through the photographer that we interviewed, who did documentary photography in Ukraine. She helped him go to Serhivka, and he visited one of the hospitals there where they photographed some of the young people that were actually in the hotel that was struck by the missiles there. And so he spoke really highly of her and connected me with her. And she's living now, moved back to Serhivka, where she's from, because they need help there, just to volunteer and help however she can, help get medicine to victims of that airstrike, or, in whatever way she can. So I spoke to her last week, and we'll be rolling out a story about her story. She set up a nonprofit so that she can raise money to help people in her town. And just talking to her and hearing what she's been through, like so many Ukrainians, and just the resilience and the faith that she has, for example, that Ukraine will persevere, and just the resilience demonstrated by just all the everyday Ukrainians there, to me is just so incredibly inspiring in terms of the human will, and just those kinds of stories. I think they're hard stories because it's what the people have been through has been so horrific, but at the same time, seeing people trying to overcome and persevere, and just the united front of Ukrainians is very inspirational. So those are stories that we're trying to get to people in Ukraine, and to speak to people so that we can share those stories. And then also we want to share stories about Ukrainian culture, the beautiful part of Ukraine. And so that, before this conflict, I think even in the United States, people have heard of Ukraine. I grew up and everyone thought Ukraine was Russia, and it's not. So, just so that people discover the unique Ukrainian culture, because it's not all the same, right? And so there's just such devastation and darkness now in Ukraine, that trying to share some of that as well. That's what we want to also do. So, for example, we recently also connected with Razom for Ukraine, and they are involved in supporting this dance production that is starting to tour the United States. And it's some Ukrainian ballroom dancers that actually have started this show that is this beautiful, this visual experience. Ukrainians in Ukraine worked in, as they described it, bomb shelter, to create the visual background for these ballroom dancers to dance to. And just recently they had their premiere of this show. So stories like that, where we're celebrating culture, and it's not all about the darkness, stories about difference makers, the people that are really supporting Ukraine, and the global community coming together, the people inside Ukraine, and then Ukrainian culture. Those are the things that we're focused on, that we want to share with the world.
Thank you for doing this important work. Thank you for your time, and have a nice day.
Thank you. So nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you too.